This video provides guidance on how to write intended learning outcomes for an educational program. What are intended learning outcomes? Intended learning outcomes are the statements of what a student will be able to do or demonstrate at the completion of a certain sequence of learning. This could be a module, topic, course, or a program. Learning outcomes are mainly concerned with the achievements of the learner and less with the intentions of the teacher. Learning outcomes also provide students of what is expected of them in terms of performance, to achieve desired grades and credits. Why are learning outcomes necessary? Learning outcomes provide clarity about what students are expected to achieve and the knowledge, skills, or attitudes they should develop by the end of the learning. They serve as a guide for designing instructional activities, assessments, and assignments. Learning outcomes shift the focus from teaching to learning. This learner-centered approach promotes active engagement and encourages students to take ownership of their learning. When are the learning outcomes established? Learning outcomes should be developed during early stages of the curriculum and course development process. Learning outcomes should not be considered static. They may need to be revisited and revised over time, based on feedback, evaluation data, changes in program or institutional goals, or emerging needs. Who should develop the learning outcomes? Developing learning outcomes is a collaborative process with input and expertise from stakeholders. Subject experts, students, industry, instructional designers, accreditation bodies can involve in learning outcomes development process. Where should the learning outcomes be made available? Learning outcomes should be made readily available to students, teachers, and other stakeholders involved in the course or program. These should be given for each volume of learning module, topic, and course levels. These should be referenced in the assessment criteria or grading rubrics used in the course. Learning outcomes should also be referenced to learning resources and activities. Let us now look at how to develop learning outcomes. There are generally 5 aspects you need to be mindful in formulating learning outcomes. First one is the purpose of writing the learning outcome. Secondly, identify the content that will support the purposes of learning outcomes. Next, you have to decide on appropriate action verb to be used that best serve the purpose. Also, you may need to think of the context. That is, any limits and conditions that are not evident from the action verb. Finally, and most importantly, the clarity in combining all of the above aspects. Let us look at these 5 aspects in little more detail. We consider writing learning outcomes for a course. That is relatively large volume of learning in a selected subject area having several principles, concepts, and perhaps applications. To decide on the purpose, think of the rationales behind providing the course, for which you intend to formulate learning outcomes, and to achieve what program outcomes. Next, think of what the students, who pass the course, will know, understand, and be able to do. If you ask the students, "What did you learn in your course?" what would you like the student to say? At this stage, it is essential to identify the subject content that aligns with the purpose of formulating learning outcomes. To accomplish this, it is necessary to possess a comprehensive and extensive understanding of the subject matter. It's important to note that, at this point, the subject content and syllabus for the course being considered in the program have not been completely established. Once all the learning outcomes for the course have been established, the comprehensive syllabus must be developed. Once the content has been defined, you need to consider the level of cognitive activity with which the student will be expected to engage, and then decide on the most appropriate action verb that matches well with the purpose and the content. To help you in selecting an appropriate verb that communicates the cognitive level, you might use a taxonomy of learning. Next, you need to think of the context that helps to define limits around what you expect the students to learn in the course. The identification of a context is most important at the level of the apply, and above in revised Bloom's taxonomy. Here, we consider the module to be the smallest volume requiring up to about 5 hours of learning, Topics are considered as a collection of modules. Then a course consists of a few topics. Number of volumes of learning from the largest to the smallest, as well as the names used, can be different depending upon your requirements. A program consists of several courses drawn from different subject areas. The formulation of learning outcomes should vary depending on the amount of learning involved. Let us see the differences. The scope of employability of learning outcomes is highest at the program level, but at the module level it is narrow, being limited to very specific piece of subject content. The learners are not expected to tackle real problems of multidisciplinary setup after completing a module. But there may be exceptions to this. Learning outcomes of modules in certain subject areas can lead to meaningful employability and real workplace. The degree of meaningful employability of what they learnt increases from modules to courses, and finally to the program. However, module, topic and course level outcomes should support student progression to the outcomes related to higher cognition levels that are placed towards the end of the program. Let us now see a few examples with the format of writing learning outcomes. The learning outcomes should be specific, measurable for assessment, achievable by the students with the provided learning resources and the time frame, relevant to the instructional method and assessment, and time-bound. The learning outcomes, 1 and 2, given here are more suitable for a module. The third one is suitable for a course.